Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be a review of The Half of It, which is a film that just dropped on Netflix. As some of you might know, I am a sucker for a teen film, so I was really excited for this teen film. I thought it was an interesting concept and I was kind of looking to see if this was going to be another hit for Netflix. Are they going to make another film from it? Is it going to be another big success for Netflix? That was kind of going on in the back of my head going into this. So a plot summary of the film is that we follow Ellie, who was a straight A student who was hired by a jock to help him impress this girl. But things get sticky when Ellie starts to develop feelings for the same girl. So instantly after reading that summary, I was like, okay, this could be juicy, some love triangle drama. And then obviously a lot of hype from this film has come because we have an Asian lead and it is written and directed by Alice Vu, who is an Asian lesbian filmmaker. And for me personally, it's the first time that I've seen it in the mainstream. So diving into the narrative, I think the opening of the film was very strong. I really liked the animation / stop motion that they had in the beginning of the film. That turns into a paper that Ellie is writing, and obviously her whole deal in the film is she is being paid to write letters. So I thought the opening with the voiceover and everything was pretty decent, solid opening, and kind of set the tone of the film as well. So from that opening, you can tell that it's not going to be necessarily a cheesy, dramatic, sensationalist teen film. You kind of get a feel that it's going to be a bit more on the serious side. So we're introduced to Elle straight away. Obviously, we know she's smart. We know she's monetizing this smartness. She's got a little side hustle, writing people's papers for them. And we learn that her main reason for doing that is because she is supporting her family. She's a bit of a loner. She's living in this small town that's very narrow-minded. It's a Christian conservative town full of racists and homophobes. And it seems like she is like one of the only people of colour in this small town. And you definitely do notice it, but I think in this film, because it's framed as this small ignorant town, they can get away with it. But I'd be interested to know from people who have watched it, did you think it was weird that she was pretty much the only person of colour, her and her dad, in the whole town? Or do you feel like it makes sense considering the type of environment the town is meant to represent? I think right off the bat, Ellie is a likeable character. She's a likeable lead, and then quite early on in the film we get introduced to Paul, who is this stereotypical stupid jock, fairly friendly. He's not really a bully. He wants to impress this girl and he hires Ellie to write love letters for him. And the girl that Paul is interested in is called Esther, who is one of the more popular girls at school. Ellie is doing pretty much all of the work. He doesn't really have much to add to the letters. He kind of just wants this Esther girl because she's pretty, and that's all he can really say. Obviously, going into the film, I feel like we all knew this was going to be a big chunk of the storyline and was the main storyline that was going to carry us through the film. And for the most part, I enjoyed that storyline. I feel like with these films, you kind of know what's going to happen. You know Ellie has an interest in the girl. There's a lot of back and forth with these letters. Ellie starts to feel close with the girl through corresponding with her, and I think that whole situation was crafted quite well. But what I didn't expect from the film is that we would see Ellie and Paul develop this friendship together, and I thought that was a bit of a surprise because I kind of went in there assuming it was going to be more of a thing where Ellie starts to realise she has feelings for Esther and starts sabotaging Paul, and then there's a rivalry there and it'll be a fight to who can win her over. That's how I initially assumed the story was going to go. And yeah, I probably would have liked to have seen that, but I still do like the direction the film went down. But I think one thing to point out for me personally that I found is that the film didn't really sell to me what was so appealing about this Esther girl. I feel like it's a typical teen trope. You know, the popular girl turns out to be this really down-to-earth girl who's not just a pretty face, and she doesn't have all the things that everyone thinks that she does, and she's just this normal, real girl. And typically those tropes do work, but I found myself not really caring that much about Esther and who ends up getting her, whether Paul ends up getting her or Elle ends up getting her. I just kind of felt like Esther wasn't all that. And I think that could be down to perhaps a lack of development there, because I feel like we saw a lot of development with Paul and Ellie and their friendship together. So in comparison to that, with the whole Esther storyline, I feel like the Esther aspect fell a bit flat, in my opinion. I think those are probably the moments I enjoyed the most. The moments with Elle and Paul together, when they start to develop this friendship and they start opening up to each other about their lives, about their reservations, about their family lives. And I think those moments that we see is where I feel like the film was its best, in my opinion, and the bits that I personally enjoyed the most. In terms of the love triangle, I feel like initially it was an exciting concept, but I think by the end of it, it definitely got less and less exciting. They tried to put some twists here and there, but I feel like it definitely could have been executed a lot better, in my opinion. And I think the result of the love triangle is definitely going to leave some people feeling a bit misled, or feeling like they came for something and left without the thing that they were coming for. By the end of it, I did feel a little bit baited, actually. I felt like I had come in here because it was marketed a certain way and it didn't give me what I came for. For those of you who watched it, what do you guys think? Do you like the way that the love triangle ended? Were you here for the kind of unexpectedness of it all? Or were you kind of feeling a bit cheated, a bit baited? Let me know what you think. Obviously, with these types of storylines, we know there's going to be a reveal at some point, some sort of resolution. And I think the journey leading up to that was a little bit lackluster. I thought there was going to be just a little bit more drama than it was. There was definitely drama there, but it wasn't necessarily the drama that I was expecting or was necessarily satisfied with. I feel like there was some part of the narrative that led us to the final point that didn't necessarily make sense. Like, for instance, Ellie is this loner at school, she's antagonized, and then suddenly people want to know her and want to know who she is. And I think the situation that led to that point, for me, didn't really make sense. They provided us with a reason why, but that reason, again, didn't really make sense for somebody who I'm assuming has been pretty much been a loner for the whole of their school life. For those of you who watched it, did that make sense to you? Or did you find it a bit like confused, or you didn't really believe it? Before the whole reveal, we also see Ellie and Esther hanging out despite them not talking to each other for the whole of high school. Again, the reason why they hung out didn't really add up to me. And there was quite a few moments in the film where I was kind of like, how does that make sense? And there's quite a few moments in the film where I felt like it was a bit empty. They didn't really explain things well. I'm not really sure how that is adding up. But yeah, if you watch the film, let me know if you feel the same way, if you feel like everything kind of did make sense. The film touches on various issues, but it kind of touches it on surface levels. So obviously Ellie is gay. It's kind of just like a fact. We don't really get much exploration there. I don't necessarily feel like necessarily needed to be this big dramatic storyline surrounding her sexuality, but there was a dramatic moment regarding her sexuality in the film. That whole scene with her and Paul gets a little bit deep, gets a little bit like, oh, okay. That was a bit awkward, that was a bit deep there. And then after that, we don't really get anything else. So it's just kind of like, is her sexuality meant to be important? Is it not? I was a little bit confused about the significance of her sexuality in this, considering the fact that it seems like they filmed it in this narrow-minded, homophobic town for a reason, but we don't really get much exploration on that, rather than that tiny scene between her and Paul. And a little speech that we see at the end of the film, again, wasn't really developed. And as I said in the film, I didn't really care about Elle's feelings for Esther or Esther period. I kind of was just more invested in her and Paul's friendship rather than her potentially becoming a thing with Esther. I'm not really sure if we got much of a storyline in regards to Elle's sexuality. But what did you guys think? Were you satisfied with it? With the direction of Elle's sexuality in this film? Or did you feel like there was something missing there? Let me know. Another storyline, which again, I struggled to find believable, was the whole storyline with her father. Her father, he's got a PhD, but he has struggled to get a job because he doesn't really know English that well. I'm not disputing the fact that there probably is in America who've been living in there for so many years who have struggled to learn English. But in my experience, coming from a family of immigrants, most immigrants generally they learn the language within the first year or so. So I'm struggling with the fact of her father not knowing how to speak English despite living in America for 10 plus years and having a PhD on top of that, but struggling to have learned English. I don't buy that. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's possible, or do you feel like that part of the narrative was a little bit sketchy, that they just needed something to have Elle be desperate enough for money to help Paul? What do you guys think about that whole storyline? I feel like the ending was a bit lackluster for me. There were some cute moments in the ending. I was expecting a lot more drama than it was. And by the end of it, I was just kind of thinking, I'm not really sure what this film was actually all about. It kind of felt a bit incomplete. And not like a cliffhanger incomplete. It just felt like something was missing by the end. But what did you guys think about the ending? Do you think it was a nice conclusion? Were you a bit disappointed? Were you left wanting more? Like I said, there was a little cute moment in the end, that last scene on the train. I feel like that was a cute little ending, but I think overall as an ending, it felt a little bit lackluster. So yeah, overall narrative wise, I feel like it was okay, but I was personally expecting a bit more. I was expecting a little bit more drama. I get it was a bit more of a serious film, but even still it felt just a little bit empty in areas. The only really good parts of the film I think was when Ellie and Paul were together. The rest of it I didn't really care about. I think as a concept it was a pretty good concept, but I feel like the execution definitely could have been better and leaves you wanting more. I feel like all of the characters did a pretty decent job. It was a solid cast, but I do have to point out that everybody except for Paul and Elle looked about 30 years old. Esther looks like she should have been teaching at the school rather than being a student there. Her boyfriend as well looks like somebody who should have been teaching at the school instead of pretending to be a student. The extras that we saw in the beginning, I feel like I even saw somebody who looked like dead on 35. Netflix, get it together. I mean, it's getting ridiculous now. I'm just thinking, if I want to be on a teen show in Netflix, do I have to wait 10 years to be able to audition? Because it's getting crazy. The main characters, Elle and Paul, absolutely loved them. They had such great chemistry, and I feel like them two made the film. They were the ones keeping me watching. With their friendship developing, I was even thinking like, could I see them together? They'd be cute if Ellie wasn't gay. I definitely stan the friendship. I'm not gonna lie, I was shipping them. Was anyone else kind of shipping them? Let me know. I really like Paul's development because obviously we kind of just writ him off of this stupid, dumb jock. But obviously we see he's a pretty decent guy. He's kind, he sticks up for Elle. All in all, I feel like he was a really likable character. One of the first jocks that I found likable from the very beginning. Even when he was saying the most stupidest stuff, you couldn't help but love him. Obviously that intense scene between him and Ellie aside, lovable character. Like I said, Esther, I didn't really care about her, to be honest. Didn't really care about her. Didn't care who got her. Just didn't really care, to be honest. I don't think that's necessarily her fault. The actor's fault. I don't think she was developed well enough for her to be this, oh my gosh, she's this amazing guy. I totally understand why Paul wants to be with her. I totally understand why Ellie wants to be with her. there was just, for me, there was a lack of appeal there. I think overall the cinematography was great. Netflix always has pretty decent cinematography. There were so many great shots in this film, so many picturesque scenes in this film. There's so many shots that I could point out, but namely when Ellie and Esther were in that little pond thing and they were both floating side by side. I feel like that shot in the water was really nice. Excellent cinematography. The score was pretty decent as well. Production, the editing was all done really well. Overall, I feel like it was a decent film. I was expecting more, definitely, and like I said, I feel like some of the narrative definitely could have been a bit tighter. I feel like there was some empty bits, there were some bits that didn't really make sense. But all in all, I feel like it's a decent watch. I'm not sure if this film will be as successful as some of the other breakout teen films on Netflix. So yeah, I'd be interested to know what your guys' thoughts are on this film if you've watched it. Do you think this is Netflix's next big hit, or do you feel like it's just a decent but forgettable Netflix watch? Let me know what you guys think. So I think, taking everything into account, I'm going to give the film a solid 3 out of 5. But yes, if you haven't watched it, do let me know if this is something that you are or were thinking about checking out. And if you have watched it, do let me know what you thought of it. And of course, let me know what you thought of my review. And for those of you who have watched it, let me know what you would rate it out of 5. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you have, don't forget to press that notification bell so you'll know when the next review is dropping. Till next time, guys, bye!